Can you see the PowerPoint slides? Okay, let me then just turn on to, all right. And actually, okay.
Shifu, this one is the presenter view. We can see both. Is that what you want?
No, I'm trying to look for the switch, right? But it's sort of covered by the. Wait, let me see, huh? Okay, never mind. Let's go on with this first, and then we see how it goes. Okay, so yes, like we said, we'll start off with a short puja first. And yes, so please put your palms together, and then we'll recite the Buddha's name and bow 3 times. Okay, so this is Li Phor. So recite Nam Mo Ben Shi Shi Jia Mo Ni Phor Bao. Nam Mo Ben Shi Shi Jia Mo Ni Phor Bao. And then Nam Mo Ben Shi Shi Jia Mo Ni Phor Bao. Okay, now let's just move on to.
Can we pay respects to you?
Sorry?
Can we pay respects to you?
Oh, sure, anytime.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, let's pay respects to Shifu with 3 bows. First bow. Second bow. Third bow.
Okay. So yes, so let's proceed with our short puja by reciting a short verse in praise of the Buddha, right? So the words are on the left picture. So it starts with 天上天下. So palms together, recite 天上天下无如佛，十方世界已无比，世间所有我尽见，一切无有如佛者。Bow. Okay, and now let us express gratitude for the Buddha's teaching and resolve to learn the Dhamma well. Palms together, and then we recite the Kai Jing Ji. And that's on the right. Recite 无上甚深微妙法，百千万劫难遭遇。我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。Okay, bow. All right. Well, I'm still trying to figure out the switch to the screen. Anyone? Okay. Let me try again. I will stop and enter again. Okay. All right. Okay. Now display setting. Okay. I got it. Is this all right? Okay, good. So let us begin then. Let's do a few minutes of meditation before we begin to calm our mind, yeah? So that we can better learn the Dhamma well. So I'm sure you're all experts, but well, the basic instructions, make yourself comfortable, yeah? As comfortable as you can. And then, check your sitting position, straighten your back, upright but not uptight. Imagine a string on top of your head, pulling you up. Roll back your shoulders, align your ears and shoulders and relax. Okay, then gently close the eyes if you prefer, or if you are used to half open eyes or opening your eyes while you meditate, that's perfectly fine as well. Okay, then calm down. For beginners, begin by counting your breath. In breath, out breath, 1, and then 2, 3, all the way to 10, and then get back to 1, 2, 10 again. So do this at your own pace, natural rhythm. Do not control your breath. Just let it go naturally. For those who are experienced meditators, yeah, you don't need to count. You can just go on and focus on your breath, right? The area above your upper lip. All right, so either count your breath 1 to 10 to calm our mind, or if your mind is sufficiently calm, just go straight to focusing on the breath, the area above your upper lip. Again, do so at your own pace. Okay, do so at your own pace, not to worry. Do not control your breath, do not force it. Just let it be, and then just focus or count, yeah? Well, as we just began meditating, yeah, there may be all kinds of thoughts coming to our mind. Just let them come and then just get back to our breath. Nothing to worry about, yeah. Whatever thoughts that come by, wandering thoughts, distracting thoughts, just let it be, and then gently focus our attention back to our breath. Okay, the purpose of focusing on just one object of meditation, our breath, is to calm our mind. So we call this calm or tranquility meditation, or in Pali, samatha meditation. Okay, so again, gently focus on your breath. No force, no control, just let it be and observe it. Yeah, focus on your breath. All right, since we have done a few minutes of calm meditation, let us move on to mindfulness meditation. Again, focus on your breath. Now be more mindful of the qualities of your breath. Is it an in-breath or an out-breath? Is it a long breath or a short breath? Is it a heavy breath or a light breath? Check again. We are practicing mindfulness of our breath or mindfulness of body. Is it an in-breath or an out-breath? A long breath or a short breath? A heavy breath or a light breath? Now be mindful of how your breath affects your body. For example, how your abdomen rises or expands when you breathe in, and how your abdomen contracts and falls when breathing out. Right? So check how your breath affects your body. Abdomen rising, falling, rising, falling. When we breathe, oxygen goes to our blood and then to all cells of our body. So actually our whole body is breathing, yeah? Not just our nose or the abdomen. So again, now we're practicing mindfulness of our breath. Now check if our breath is calming our body, yeah? Whether our breath is making us more relaxed. As we observe our breaths, be mindful of their influence their flowing nature, moments of rising and falling. Rising, falling, flowing nature, impermanence. Now, when we perceive our breaths as they are, impermanent and ever-changing, be mindful of the suffering that arises if we become attached to them, and be mindful that there is no permanent substantial self. As we observe our breaths, be mindful, therefore, of the three universal characteristics of impermanence, suffering, and not self. So we have done a few minutes of mindfulness of our breath or mindfulness of body. Now let us move on to mindfulness of feelings or mindfulness of sensations. Bring your mind to be mindful of your feelings as you breathe. Check your feelings. Do you feel a sense of pleasure or a sense of displeasure or a sense of neither pleasure nor displeasure, right? So check again. Is it a sense of pleasure, a sense of displeasure, or a sense of neither pleasure nor displeasure? Be mindful that feelings may lead to unwholesomeness. For example, pleasant feelings may lead to attachment or greed. Unpleasant feelings to aversion or anger. And neutral feelings, neither pleasure nor displeasure, to delusion manifesting as apathy and complacency. So as we observe our feelings, be mindful of their impermanence, flowing nature, moments of rising and falling. So our feelings are just like our breath. Impermanent, flowing, rising, falling. When we perceive our feelings as they are, impermanent and ever-changing, be mindful of the suffering that arises if we become attached to them. And be mindful that there is no permanent, substantial self. As we observe our feelings, be mindful, therefore, of the three universal characteristics of impermanence, suffering, and not self. Okay, so to summarize, we have started off with calm or tranquility meditation by focusing on just one object, and that's our breath. Then we have moved on to examine the qualities of our breath, and that's mindfulness of breath or mindfulness of body. Subsequently, we move on to mindfulness of feelings. Yeah. And if we do this for a while, our mindfulness of body and feelings are good. We should have both a calm body and a calm mind. Okay, just one more minute. You can focus either on checking the qualities of the breath or your feelings, pleasure, displeasure, or neutral, neither pleasure nor displeasure. Okay, good. Please gently open your eyes, relax, and we can begin our talk for today, for this evening. Okay. Yes, so today is actually lecture 2, the second noble truth, the cause of suffering. And our structure is beginning with an introduction by reviewing lecture 1, the first noble truth, nature of suffering. Then we'll move on to the second noble truth, which is the cause of suffering. Subsequently, the 3 universal characteristics. We have already spoken about 2 last week. And today we'll talk about the third universal characteristic, which is not self. And then the fourth part, the 5 aggregates. And then finally, some teachings from Master Thich Nhat Hanh, entering the heart of the Buddha, transforming suffering into peace, joy, and liberation. Okay, so let's begin with a short introduction by reviewing what we covered last lecture. The topic was First Noble Truth, nature of suffering. So we began with the 4 noble truths, looking at its significance in Buddhism. And we mentioned 5 points, yeah? From suffering to happiness. Why are the truths considered noble? Cause and effect. The medicine analogy of disease, diagnosis, cure, treatment, and then progressive sequence. Then we look at the 3 kinds of suffering, yeah? We have dukkha, which is the Pali term for suffering, as ordinary suffering, covering physical bodily suffering and mental or psychological suffering. We look at dukkha as produced by change, and then dukkha as conditions or conditioned states. Then we ask the question, does the truth of suffering suggest that Buddhism is pessimistic? And the answer is no, right? We take a look at, we took a look at the views of 3 scholars. After that, we move on to take a look at the 3 universal characteristics, starting off with impermanence, application in daily life, the practice of remembering death, the practice of 10 meditations on ugliness. From then on, we move on to the second universal characteristic, suffering. And we ended with teachings from Master Thich Nhat Hanh on application of daily life, suffering, and application in daily life, right, of impermanence. Okay, so with that short review, let us then move on to the second noble truth, the cause of suffering. Well, in the Buddhist text, this is explained as follows. This is the noble truth of the origin of suffering, the thirst, yeah, or tanha, for repeated existence, which associated with delight and greed delights in this and that, namely the thirst for the objects of sense desire, the thirst for existence, and the thirst for non-existence. So basically, we are saying that craving is the cause of suffering. Second noble truth, craving causes suffering. We've said that in our world, everything is always changing and unstable. So craving of anything will never lead to us to be able to hold on to the things we crave. So we start off with desire, like a trickle of stream. Then when our desire increases, it becomes a river of craving. And if we are not careful, we will be swept away, right, by this currents of swift and flowing river of craving. So it may become like an addiction, right? Addiction to drugs, alcohol, smoking, computer games, pornography, sex, etc. Now, when we talk about craving, we can identify three kinds of craving. The first is the craving for objects of sense desire. Second is the craving for existence. And third is the craving for non-existence. So let us talk briefly on each of these 3, right? So beginning with objects of sense desire. Here we're talking about craving for pleasant experiences. So this is like drinking salt water when we are thirsty. And of course, if we drink salt water when we are thirsty, our thirst will only increase. So objects of sense desire, objects for acquiring wealth, craving for material things. So if we crave for wealth and material things, this usually leads us to three problems that cause suffering. First, right, the problem of getting them. Oh, so we're talking about wealth, money, the problem of getting more and more money. We're talking about material things. Maybe we want a house, the problem of getting a house. And once we have them, we have the problem of looking after them and protecting them, right? So how to look after our money and protect our money, or how to look after our house and protect our house. And the third problem is the problem of losing them, because sooner or later, all things will fall apart and we ourselves will die, right? So we cannot cling on to our money or our house, when we passed away. So this is what we mean by the craving arising from objects of sense desire, okay, leading to problems of getting them, protecting them, and then losing them. All right, so that's the first kind of craving. The second kind of craving is craving for existence, or craving to experience becoming, or craving for eternal life. So it seems that, although in one life we experience all kinds of suffering, but somehow, right, we may still crave for existence. And this is what causes us to be born, to be reborn again and again. So we see here in this picture, samsaric head banging. Samsara, right, like we've said in last lecture, refers to our cycle of death and birth. This is dukkha, this is suffering. And the motto, the cause is ignorance and craving. So when we have this craving for existence, for eternal life, on the left, right, we have death. And after that, because of this craving, it leads us to rebirth again. So the wolves here symbolizes the greed for the five sense pleasures, etc., etc. Basically, craving. Okay. So here we are talking about the second kind of craving, craving for existence, for eternal life. And that leads us to be reborn over and over again. The third is the craving for non-existence. Here we're talking about the craving for eternal death. The second kind of craving is eternal life, right? And here, non-existence is the craving for eternal death, or the craving for annihilation. This means that we hope that when our present life ends, there's nothing else to it. Everything is totally destroyed. So if we have this kind of craving, it may express itself in suicide or nihilism. So let's say people who face grave problems, they may see suicide as the solution. Why? Because after this life, they believe that there's nothing else, right? No more suffering. So they may commit suicide. On the other hand, the other consequence is that people who believe that once we die, nothing else, there's nothing else. And so we can do whatever we like in this life, right? There's what we call a moral non-consequentialism. So this person may then just indulge in extreme sensual pleasures. Okay, so this is the craving for non-existence, for eternal death, and then believing in this kind of craving can lead us to either suicide on one end, or to the other end, to excessive sensual indulgence, because nothing else, there's nothing else after we die. Okay, so these are the three kinds of craving that we can talk about. And then when we have these three kinds of craving, what follows next is grasping, or attachment, or clinging. So we normally talk about craving and grasping, craving and attachment, craving and clinging coming together. So starting with craving, this craving crystallizes as grasping, or attachment, or clinging. So How did this happen? The various kind of things that evoke desires in us, lead us to craving, and then as a result of our craving, we grasp, we want to attach, we want to cling on to things and try to take possession of them. We want to call them our own, right? Our own things, our own possessions. And in this regard, Buddhism tells us that there are 4 kinds of grasping, or 4 kinds of attachment, 4 kinds of clinging. Well, see the red box, that's the clinging or grasping for objects of sense desire, sense pleasure. Second is the yellow box, clinging or grasping to views, actually the green box, right? To views, to wrong views of existence and non-existence, which we have talked about before. Third is the yellow box, clinging, grasping to rites and rituals, believing them that just doing so will lead us to achieve liberation. And the 4th kind of grasping, clinging, or attachment is the doctrine of the self, right? That's the purple box. So the most significant thing in all this is craving and attachment rather than whatever is the object of our attachment and craving. So it is not money that is to be blamed, right? Or the car or the house that is to be blamed, right? These are just objects of our craving. And so the most important thing is actually the craving itself, right? So one way to relate to these 4 kinds of grasping or attachment or craving is to note that a lot of this, right, arises from the craving for a self, right? The craving that, we exist. And then from then on, it leads to wrong views. Arising from the self, we have all kinds of views, all kinds of possessions, all kinds of things that we want, and this gives rise to cravings of rites and rituals or cravings of sense pleasures. Okay, so we've talked about 3 kinds of craving, 4 kinds of grasping and attachment. And one way of relating the 4 kinds of grasping is, as we can see, portrayed in this box. All right, you're with me? Okay, so then let us move on to the basic cause, ignorance or delusion. The darkest night is ignorance. So the foundation of craving is actually ignorance or delusion, especially about the nature of the self. So we usually take the self as real, and because of this, that is the fundamental cause of suffering. Remember the previous diagram? We start off with the green box, and that's the self. So when we have this conception of a self, there arises the conception of other, right? So with self, then with other people. And other people or others, they are either helpful or hostile to ourselves. They are either pleasant or unpleasant, desirable or undesirable. So because of this ignorance of the self, we have craving to people or things that we like, and aversion to people or things or experiences that we do not like, right? So what we're saying is that ignorance is actually the underlying cause of suffering. Not seeing things as they are, failing to understand the truth about life. And from this root of ignorance grows what we call the tree of craving, of attachment, of greed, aversion, hatred, envy, jealousy, and other defilements or other afflictions. Okay? And all this will then lead to, of course, the fruit of suffering. So in short, we can identify 3 fundamental defilements or afflictions of the mind, and these are greed, aversion, and delusion, right? Ignorance, delusion, or ignorance. And they manifest in different ways and result in suffering. Okay, so that's the second noble truth. The cause of suffering are 3 kinds of craving, 4 kinds of grasping, and the fundamental cause is ignorance. The darkest night is ignorance or delusion. Right? And we can see here the 3 defilements or the three so-called poisons that lead us to be reborn again and again. Yeah, you see the circle that represents samsara. In Tibetan Buddhism, attachment, or greed is normally represented by a bird, and then aversion or anger, hatred represented by a snake, and ignorance or delusion represented by a pig. And then you see each clinging on to the other, right? The three animals, the three poisons, and all these lead us to be reborn again and again. Okay, so that's basically the second noble truth. And we now want to move on to talk more about the three universal characteristics. Yeah, just like last week, we started off with the Four Noble Truths, and then we talk about how when we understand, we practice the Four Noble Truths, we walk the Noble Eightfold Path, we will realize, right? We will understand, experience, and realize the three universal truths. So the three universal truths are just like the Four Noble Truths. They are fundamental teachings, all the three universal characteristics. Now, last week, we have talked about suffering and impermanence. And so this week, we will move on to discuss the third universal characteristics of not self. Okay? So, yes. So these three universal characteristics are also known as the three seals of Dharma because they are present in all of the Buddha's teachings. So how did this teaching on the not self begin? How did this arise? So this is now what we are going to look at. Now remember that the Buddha lived in India, ancient India, about 2,500 years ago, right? So during that time, 2,500 years ago in ancient India, there were the beliefs, there were the beliefs that there was a self, There are different kinds of philosophies, different kinds of religions, and they all believe that there is a self. And in Pali, it is called Atta, or in Sanskrit, it is known as Atman. Okay, so when the Buddha talks about not self, the Buddha's teaching is critical of this notion of self. So what is this notion of self that the ancient Indians believe in? 2,500 years ago. So to the ancient Indians who believe in this notion of self, the self is like an inner controller, right? The self is believed to be something that is immortal in us. The self is believed to be something that is unchanging, something that is constant, underlying all our experiences. Our experiences are unstable and changing, but beneath all these unstable experiences, they believe that there is this self, which is unchanging, which is constant, which is indestructible. And because of this belief, the devotees, some of them, they practice self-mortification, right? They torture themselves in order to free the self or free the soul, right? It's similar like the soul from the body because they see the soul to be unchanging, right? To be constant, and the body, of course, changes, dies. So the practice then is to torture themselves to free the soul, the self from the body. So in the midst of this kind of belief, the Buddha disagreed, right? The Buddha says that, there's actually nothing of this kind of self that was the belief then, right? So in this context, we talk about not self. The Pali term is anatta. The Sanskrit term is anatma. So this concept of not self is actually very significant in Buddhism, right? It is this concept of not self that unifies all schools, all traditions of Buddhism. So no matter what school or what tradition of Buddhism you practice, the basic belief is in not self. And this concept of not self also distinguishes Buddhism from other religions. Yeah, many religions believe in the notion of self, but Buddhism takes exception in this and believes that there is not self. So according to Buddhism, all things are not self. All things are empty, right? So empty is another term for not self here. So you see this picture, just now we were doing meditation, right? Meditation, who is meditating? Not self, okay? So the concept of not self. And well, on the right, we have a picture of Bhikkhu Nanamoli. He's on the left, he's the monk in the center, a younger version of himself, Bhikkhu Nanamoli. He's a British, born in Cambridge. And then subsequently, he became a Buddhist monk and translated many Pali literature into English. All right. So he lived, he lived from 1905 to 1960. So he says that this not self doctrine is very important. It is like a lion's roar. Why is it like a lion's roar? Because we know that the lion is the king of animals, right? So when the lion roars, wow, it is deafening, it is bold, it is thunderous. So Bhikkhu Nanamoli say, this teaching of not self is like a lion's roar, right? Bold, thunderous, different from all other teachings of ancient India then. Okay? So it is also significant because many of Buddhist contributions, right, to philosophy, to psychology, to ethics, because Buddhism is multifaceted, it is multidisciplinary, it is related to philosophy, to psychology, to ethics. Now, the Buddhist contribution to all these different disciplines arises from the doctrine of not self. Yeah. So, for instance, Buddhist philosophy explains why the idea of not self or of self is wrong. Then Buddhist psychology shows us how is it that there is no self, and then Buddhist ethics tell us how to get rid of the self, right? And then, of course, when we talk about the highest goal of Buddhism, that's nirvana or nibbana, it shows us the final state where the self is completely eliminated. So when we can experience not self, we can experience enlightenment. We can experience nibbana. So this is the significance of not self in Buddhism. Okay. All right, let's just move on again. So why is it that in ordinary times, in ordinary life, we say that, we talk about this self and that self. So in order to understand this from a Buddhist perspective, we have to distinguish between what we call conventional truth and ultimate truth, right? To understand this concept of not self. So what is conventional truth? Conventional truth is relative truth or mundane truth, right? The truth that we use in our ordinary daily life. And when we talk about ultimate truth, we're talking about absolute truth or supra-mundane truth. So from the Buddhist perspective, the ultimate truth is that there's no self. There's no I, there's no person, there's no being, in the sense that this self, this person, this being, this I is permanent and unchanging. There's no such thing from the perspective of ultimate truth. But of course, in our daily life, right, we do talk about I, you, a Dharma brother, Dharma sister, person. And of course, we are not lying, because when we talk about I, you, or Dharma brother, sister, we are using a language that is part of conventional truth. So since we live in this mundane world, right? We have to use language to communicate. And then when we use language, this is I, you, being. So this is conventional truth and ultimate truth. So from the perspective of ultimate truth in Buddhist teachings, there's no self. But because we're living in this mundane world, we need to communicate with each other. So we use language as conventional truth. And in that sense, our language says that there is a self, okay? So here, the Buddha explains that, language is needed to communicate the teachings, right? The Buddhist teachings, but we should not be misled by their superficial implications. So when we use terms like names, expressions, designations, language, this is for use in a conventional world and to enable us to communicate, just like the picture on the left, right? We have all kinds of images, we use language, we use whatever things to communicate with each other, okay? But we should not be misled by them to think that, this kind of language, this kind of conventional terms represent ultimate truth. The ultimate truth is the picture on the right. That there is no permanent, unchanging self. Okay? So this is from the Buddhist perspective, that there is no permanent self, and there's no permanent self such as a substantial, permanent, unchanging, independent self. So this is not the case. In conventional language, in our daily language, we may just refer to this, but we should not be misled from the perspective of ultimate truth, because there's no such permanent self. Okay, this may sound a little bit abstract, but slowly, it is a very important concept that we need to understand, okay, in relation to the Four Noble Truths. Okay, so from the Buddhist perspective, we say that there is no permanent, unchanging self, right? So how does Buddhism explain this concept? Okay, so here the Buddhist concept is the five aggregates, right? So the Buddhist teaching analyzes a person or a personal experience, whatever we experience, or whatever personality that we have. It is explained in the context of the five aggregates. So as far as we are concerned, whatever that we experience in this world, in our daily life, every moment, it is because of the five aggregates. So what do we mean by the five aggregates? Well, the five aggregates represent our body and mind, right? It represents all the physical and mental factors that we experience. So together, our body and mind, our physical and mental experiences, they constitute what we call a personal experience. And in conventional language, we say that this is self. Okay, so we can see in this picture here, the body, right? Body and mind. Body is known as form. And then mind consists of four aggregates. So body or form is one aggregate. And then mind consists of four aggregates. And that's perception, which experiences encounters, feelings. Like we started off with the meditation, which experiences pleasant or unpleasant or neutral feelings. Then we have the mental factor of consciousness, the byproduct of our six senses. And then we have mental formation, the response. Not to worry, we'll look at each of this in turn. All right, so let us repeat. Now, what we call a self, what we call a person, and what we experience basically is the sum total, is the result of our five aggregates. And they are all combined according to the principle of causes and conditions, or dependent arising, but we can just see them as causes and conditions. And of course, these causes and conditions are always changing. So in a way, our bodily experiences, our mental experiences are constantly changing. Okay, so because of this, when we talk about a person, we are talking about a person with a certain patterns of causes and conditions, certain patterns of connectedness. And then, for instance, when we talk about a dog, it will have a different pattern, right? So this is, again, our body and mind, body, matter, mind, feelings or sensation, perception, volition or mental volition, and then consciousness. In Chinese, 摄受想行识. And causes and conditions lead all these things, body and mind, physical and mental processes, to be to manifest in different patterns. So we have the patterns of a person, a human, patterns of a dog. It's just like in biology, right? We talk about genes and all kinds of things that determine what species that we come from, right? So when we talk about the 5 aggregates, we are really talking about the Buddhist teachings of understanding the world at the microscopic level, right? In terms of cells, in terms of genes and all those kind of things, in terms of quantum physics, in terms of atoms and neutrons, right? Microcosmic perspective. Okay, so the body and mind that we have, right, is constantly changing. The mental and physical processes that we experience are constantly changing. Now, the Buddha teaches us that even when we die, right, in this world, when we die, it doesn't mean that all our consciousness then stop. They flow, and because they still flow, it leads us to be reborn. And we can reborn broadly in any of these 6 realms, as long as we still have the 3 poisons of greed, hatred, and ignorance, which in the first part of our lecture, we see them to be the fundamental causes of suffering, right? And rebirth. So because we still have greed, hatred, and ignorance, we can reborn if we are good in the heaven or godly realm, or as humans again, if we do lots of unwholesome things, we can be born as animals or as hells, or in the realm of hungry ghosts, or as demons, yeah? So this is the 6 realms of rebirth. So this is the wheel of life. And as long as we have greed, hatred, ignorance, the causes of suffering, we will constantly be reborn in this wheel of life. Okay? So, okay. So the Buddha also teaches that, our body and mind, like we said, right? The form and physical and mental processes, form, feelings, perception, consciousness, mental formations, they can be understood just like the way we understood in conventional language, a chariot. Yeah. What is a chariot? The picture on the left. A chariot is a convenient name, right? For our language communication purposes, for a collection of parts that are assembled in a particular way. The wheels itself are not the chariot. The axle itself is not. The carriage is not. But when they combine together, we call that a chariot. So similarly, when we talk about a person or a self, it is just a convenient to refer to our 5 aggregates. Yeah. So conventionally, we exist, a self exists, but nothing more than practical ways of speaking about our ever-changing mental and physical processes. Just like a chariot consists of different parts, when we talk about a person in conventional language, we are really talking about our ever-changing body and mind, our ever-changing bodily and mental experiences. So because everything is always changing, right? Our body is always changing. Our mental experiences are always changing. That is why there's nothing that is permanent and unchanging. No permanent, unchanging self. So the Buddha teaches us that the 5 aggregates are all very deceptive, right? Because we believe that, they are permanent, but they are not. They are actually very ephemeral. They are always changing. They are hollow. Why? The usual description is that our physical form, our body, is like a loam of foam. Foam is always changing, right? Our feeling is like a bubble. Bubble is always changing, right? Our perception is like a mirage. Nothing that is really there. Our mental formations are like a banana tree because there's no core. It's just like an onion. When we peel the banana tree or the onion, there's nothing that is a permanent core. And our consciousness is like a magician's illusion. Yeah, magician can show us certain things, but actually they are all illusion. So therefore, in Buddhist teachings, we say that there's no self, no soul, no essence, no core of personal experience apart from our changing bodily and mental experiences, such as our feelings, our ideas, our habits, and our attitudes. Okay, so again, we started off with the second noble truth, which is the cause of suffering. We talk about craving, we talk about ignorance, and then we talk about the three poisons: ignorance, anger, and craving, right? These are the three defilements that lead us to be reborn here and over again. Then from then on, we move on to take a look at the third universal truth of not self. How there's actually no self from the ultimate perspective, but in terms of conventional truth in our daily language, we use the usage, the language of self or person. But actually, the person basically just consists of our bodily, physical, and mental experiences. Body and mind, the five aggregates. Just like a chariot consists of the wheel, the axle. A table consists of the tabletop plus the table legs. It's just a convenient term. When we take away the table, the top itself is not a table, the legs itself is not a table. Okay? So now let us take a closer look at each of the aggregate. Yeah, we start off with our body, right? That's the aggregate of form, the physical factor. This refers to our bodily factors, the body as a living being, the outer object. We also refer to form or matter in terms of the things that surround us. Yeah, the earth, the trees, the buildings, our objects of everyday life. Yeah, this is form, this is matter. And in Buddhist teachings, the form consists of four basic elements, and that's earth. Earth represents solidity, and then there's water. Water represents fluidity, and there's heat, or fire. Fire represents heat, and then there's wind. Yeah, wind represents motion. So from the interaction, from the combination of these four elements, we have our flesh, bones, our blood, everything else, and that's everything physical. So in a way, right, it's like Chinese philosophy. We talk about everything consists of elements, of water, of earth, of fire, of wind, of metal. Yeah, in Buddhism, the explanation is similar. Or if we want to take a look at it from a science, chemistry perspective, for those of you who have studied science or chemistry, right? We talk about the elements, isn't it? The elements of the periodic table. Yeah, everything consists of the 118 elements of the periodic table. Okay. So from these four elements, we also have what we call the six senses, which is the eye and the object of our sight. We have the ear and the object of our hearing. We have body and the object of our touch. We have our tongue and the object of our taste. We have nose, the object of our smell, and then we have our mind, and then the objects of our mental activities, our thoughts, right, or ideas, or whatsoever. Okay, so no self. Why? Because everything consists of the five aggregates of body and mind, then the mind broken up into four experiences. And then because of body, we're talking about body or form or matter now, we have our six senses. And when we add up the six senses and their objects, we have 12. Correct? So normally when we talk about the 12 sense bases, we talk about the six senses and the six classes of objects. Of these six senses. Okay, just for start, body, right? The four elements, and then the six senses and objects, all right? But we cannot exist just as a body, right? In order for us to exist, we must exist both as body and mind. So now, from the body, from the Buddhist explanation of body, let us move on to the Buddhist explanation of mind, right? The five aggregates must exist and function together for us to have an experience. Just any one of the aggregate, we cannot. It's just like the table, right? The table itself cannot function if we just have the tabletop or just have the legs. It's only when everything is combined, then we have the table. So it is the same for us. Our body and mind must combine. Yeah? Our body and mind, consisting of the 5 aggregates, must come together, and then we can have experience. Yeah? We can exist and have experience. So now let's just take a look at the mind, yeah, which is the aggregates of feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. So yes, the simple contact between eyes and physical objects or ears and audible objects cannot result in experience, like we said before. It is only when the eyes, the object, and consciousness come together, then we have the experience of a visible object. So this is the same for all our 6 senses, yeah, and the objects. Every of our senses, we must have a consciousness. And like here, just by object and eye and object itself, we cannot see anything. It's only when we have eye, object, and eye consciousness, then we can see. So this brings us to the first mental aggregate, and that is consciousness. Okay. So we call this awareness dimension. Yeah, in plain language, consciousness, the function is to help us to be aware. Okay, so we have our 6 sense organs, we have our 6 sense objects, and in order for us to be aware, to be conscious, we have this conscious element, right? This conscious dimension to help us to be aware. So we say that the I and the object and our eye consciousness coming together, and then we have the experience of seeing. So the same goes for our ear, our sound, and our ear consciousness, we have hearing. Our body, our touch, and our body consciousness we have the experience of touching. The same for our tongue, the object of our taste, our consciousness, then we have taste. Okay, nose and the object of our smell, and the consciousness of our nose, we experience smelling. And then mind, the object of our mind plus consciousness, we experience our thoughts or ideas or anything that is going on in our mind. All right. So the 6 senses plus the 6 objects of our senses plus the 6 classes of consciousness, we call them the 18 elements in Buddhist teachings. Okay, so 6 senses, 12 aspects of it, yeah, 12 sense bases, and then 18 elements. Okay, quite easy to add up, right? 6 plus 6 plus 6, all right? Okay, now when we talk about consciousness, it is just it's just bare awareness. Yeah, we know that there's something that is there, and we can call it an experience. Like, for instance, when the eye comes into contact with a color, let's say blue, right? Our consciousness arises, and we are aware that there is a color. But we cannot be aware, but we do not know that it is blue or what color it is. We're just aware that there is color. So in order for us to be aware that it is blue, the other 3 aggregates of our mind have to come into our experience. So from being just aware of a color, then we talk about the other 3, right? So we've talked about form or the body. We've talked about consciousness is our awareness. And then now let us talk about feeling, perception, and volition. Okay, slowly lah. Okay, so when we talk about feelings or sensation, it represents our emotive, or affective dimension. All right. So according to Buddhist teachings, we can experience 3 types of feelings. Yeah, either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. That's neither pleasant nor unpleasant, which is why for our meditation, we did mindfulness of feelings. So when we experience anything, in terms of our emotive dimension, again, it is the tone of pleasure, displeasure, or neutrality. or neutral. So here picture we see blue, smiling, pleasurable, a red, not happy, right? Displeasurable, and then gray, sort of neutral. So neither pleasurable nor unpleasurable. Okay, so we have feelings, and now let's just move on to perceptions or cognition, or this represents our ideas, our ideas and concepts. And this is the mental dimension that enables us to identify something, that enables us to conceptualize something. So for instance, we said earlier on, our eyes is aware that there's a color. Then it is our perception, that tells us that, this color is blue. Or we see this apple is green, this apple is sweet, this apple is soft. It is because of our perceptions. So this represents our conceptual dimension. So our perception enables us to relate our experience to past experience and then recognize it. So it's part of the learning process, actually. Okay, so we are aware of something. We may have a feeling towards that something. Pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. With perception, we recognize it to be an apple or something that is sweet, something that is soft, or any other thing. This is our conceptual dimension. Okay. And then the final aggregate, right? The final of our mental formation, of our mental aggregates is mental formations, or we call it volition. And this represents the moral dimension. Okay, what do we mean moral dimension? Moral dimension refers to all our intentional activities, activities that we do with an intention, with a will. And when we do with an intention or a will in mind, it leads to wholesome, unwholesome, or neutral karmic effects. All right. So when we talk about this moral dimension, we can see them as habits and attitudes, our impulses, our habits and attitudes. They are conditioned responses based on our experiences of the past. Okay, so we take a look at this picture. First of all, we have our form, right? That's our body, our six senses, and the objects of our six senses. Then it combined with the consciousness, our mental aggregate, we experience contact. From contact, all these things come together, right? Instantaneously. We experience feeling, sensation, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. We recognize it, whatever it is. And then based on our recognition, it's a green apple, then depending on our habits, on our attitudes. If we like green apples, then our impulses volition will be to eat it. If we don't like green apples, we will just leave it aside. If we don't mind, we are neutral towards the green apples. So if we like something, then that develops craving. If we don't like something, there's aversion. And then if we are sort of neutral, we just leave it as it is. Okay. So again, how do we experience? How can our personal experiences be explained? It starts off, number one, right, with our form, which is our body. And this consists of our sense organs of body, eye, ear, nose, tongue, mind, leading to touch, visible objects, sound, smell, taste, mental objects. These are the external sense objects. Together with consciousness, we are aware that there is an experience, awareness of the experience. See the arrow? 1 + 2 = experience. Okay. Then from then on, we combine with our feelings, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Then we combine with our ideas and concepts, what we learn. This is a green apple, or this is a blue book, or this is that. And then combine with our mental formations or emotions. Do we like this thing? If we like, we react in this way. If we don't like, we react in another way. If we're neutral to it, we we reacted in another way. So this is actually how we experience. So again, we are talking about this because the Buddha tells us that we do not need a permanent self to explain our personal experiences, right? We can have personal experiences because of our body and mind, because of the combination of these 5 aggregates, and they're constantly changing. So that's why our experiences are also constantly changing. Okay? So again, in all our daily activities, our 5 aggregates work together to produce our experience. So for instance, now, right? There's contact between the elements of form, let's say the letters on the page and our eyes, yeah, or whatever we're seeing here. Our consciousness tell us that we are aware of this picture, okay? And then our perceptions identify the pictures here. Our feelings may lead us to experience it as pleasurable, unpleasurable, or neutral, and then how we react. Yeah. So let's say this person, yeah. Oh, okay. Maybe physics is not his favorite lecture. When it comes to physics class, his habits, attitude is to daydream. So depending on our habits, attitudes to our experiences, we react in certain ways. So this is how Buddhism explains that there is no self to explain all our experiences. There is only a body and mind, yeah? And then the body consists of our sense organs, the objects, and our mind consists of the consciousness that makes our experience possible, yeah? Awareness dimension. Then our feelings are towards that experience, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, when we identify that experience, right? Whether it's a blue apple, a green lychee, or whatever, right? That we come into contact with. And then based on our habits and attitudes, how do we react to it? We eat it, we give it to somebody, we just leave it on the table. So that, in short, explains all our experiences in life, whatever we do, every moment. So if you can understand this, you understand. And if you can understand this, you understand the core Buddhist teachings of not self. And if you can practice and realize this, you are a noble one. Yeah, you attain Nibbana. That's the basic teachings. Okay, not okay. Never mind. Just bear this is in mind, right? Because, like I said, yeah, this is fundamental teachings. Remember our chart: 4 noble truths. We practice the 8 noble path. We understand. We realize the 3 universal characteristics: not self, impermanence, dukkha. Okay. So we have been talking about the 5 aggregates. Let us see how the 5 aggregates relate to the 3 universal characteristics, right? So on the left with the 5 aggregates, body, mind, and then on the right with the universal characteristic of impermanence. Now, the nature of the 5 aggregates, each and every one of them, they are constantly changing. Our body and mental processes are constantly changing. So everything else is also constantly changing. So we're talking about processes, right, rather than things, because our experiences are constantly changing. So they are dynamic, they are not static. So in this way, if we can change, for instance, our attitudes and habits, then we can constantly transform ourselves, right? If our habits and attitudes tend to be more on the negative side, if we are aware of them, we can pick on them, and then we can transform, into positive aspects. So we can transform unwholesome mindsets, thoughts, negative mindsets, thoughts into positive mindsets, thoughts, right? So that's the importance of this teaching of not self. Because if there's a self and it is always permanent, then why do we practice, right? We cannot transform anything if everything is permanent. So this teaching on not self means that there's fluidity. Every moment, there is a possibility of change, which is why Buddhism is actually very dynamic, because Buddhism teaches us that every moment of our experience, we can transform ourselves for the better, as long as we are aware of the experience that we have. And this is the practice of mindfulness, right? Why mindfulness is the core practice in Buddhism, because when we are aware of it, if we know that we have greed now, we quickly identify it, we quickly transform it into something positive instead of negative. Okay, so this is the 5 aggregates and impermanence. And then let's just take a look at the 5 aggregates and suffering. Now, last week we say that the first noble truth of suffering, birth is suffering, aging is suffering, not to get what once is suffering. In short, the 5 aggregates of grasping are suffering. Okay, that's the last aspect. So none of the 5 aggregates which make up our personality is free from suffering, because they are objects of our grasping, clinging, due to our craving and ignorance, right? So craving, ignorance lead to clinging, and all this, we cling to everything, right? Arising from all these mental and bodily processes. Okay, so everything is constantly changing, and if we do not see this and we identify everything to be or things to be permanent, then we experience suffering. So this is the 5 aggregates and suffering. Okay, so we've talked about not self, Conventionally, we say self, but basically when we break it down, according to Buddhist teachings, it's just body and mind. Body is form, our sense organs, our objects, and then mind is feeling, perception, consciousness, and volition. Okay, and together, these 5 combine together and let us experience every moment of our life. In reality, the picture on the right, that is not self. So what to do with this understanding of not self, right? It all sounds very theoretical, very abstract. Now, what we want to do is to experience the world which is not constructed around the notion of self. Because when we have self with the ego, we tend to be selfish. We tend to be egocentric. We tend to be egoistic. Then we differentiate ourselves and other people. We want to do things that benefit us, and anything that do not benefit us, we avoid. So this leads to attachment, grasping. And then because of this, everything else is always changing, right? Our experiences are always changing, always unstable. So Buddha teaches us that there are 8 worldly conditions, and these are praise and blame, recognition and disregard, gain and loss, pleasure and sorrow. Well, they come and go like the wind. I'm sure we can all identify with this, right? So as a Buddhist, in terms of our training, in terms of our practice, what we want to do is to rest like a giant tree in the midst of them all. So we know that everything is constantly changing. When we hear praise, we know that you will go off, and people blame us, we know that you will go off. Right? So we try to remain like a giant tree. Giant tree. The winds blow, right? It is always still. So our training, our practice, our training is to become equanimous. Now, to become equanimous does not mean to become bowed up, right? To become apathetic. To be equanimous means to understand things as they are. And then from our position of equanimity, we develop a clearer mind. And then with a clear mind, we are in the best position to know what to do in this changing world. If the world changes in this way, we are equanimous, we are calm, we know what to do, we know how to respond. If the world changes in that way, if we are calm, we're equanimous, we know what to do. It's just like COVID, right? For the past 2 years, everything has been changing. But if we are calm, we're equanimous, we see things as they are, always changing, we know what to do. Well, basically, for us, we just follow the government instructions, right? Because our government is very wise. Okay, and of course, our government is very wise. All our policies are always changing, educational policy, whatever policy, but this is realistic. Nothing stays forever. So our government realizes that everything is always changing. So policies must also change. We people, right? We from different generations, we also go for different things. For my generation, we prefer this kind of things. For the younger generation, another set of things. So things always have to change. Policies always have to change. Okay. So when we reject, when we live a life by understanding the notion that self is just conventional truth, yeah, that we do not become selfish, we should not be egoistic, we should not be egocentric, then there are two ways in which we can benefit. First, we can benefit on a mundane level in our daily life. We become more creative, we can become more comfortable, we can become more open to people, right? Because our way of life would not just be centered on ourselves. We understand that everything is changing. There are other people, we are more open to them. Yeah, we do not need to be bound by everything just for ourselves. Because as long as we cling to the self, we have to defend ourselves, we have to defend our property, our reputation, our opinions. But once we give up, in this belief of this permanent self, we are more easygoing, right? We can relate better to other people. We can understand them. We can be more free in our actions. We can be more spontaneous. We can be more creative. Now, understanding the second benefit, this is from the experience of wanting to realize enlightenment. Now, believing in self is ignorance. So if we're ignorant, we cannot realize enlightenment. So once we understand that there's not self, we practice and we realize not self, then we become the noble one. Then we can become enlightened. Okay. So one mundane benefit of not self is that we free ourselves from always thinking about us. And then when we can relate freely to other people, think of other people too, we are really free. We can really be creative. And second, if we want to practice towards realization, enlightenment, we must understand and realize not self. Okay. So when our ignorance are removed, we have wisdom. Just like when darkness is removed, we have light. So when wisdom arises, we experience the peace and freedom of what we call nibbana. So see the picture on the left top. Buddha, enlightened one, the noble ones, experience light, wisdom. So what we say, therefore, what we see is that when we talk about self all the time, we are this will lead us to selfish concerns. And that causes problem for us. That causes problem for the people around us. Therefore, the aim of Buddhist practice is to realize selflessness, right? We talk about not self. Another way of talking about not self is to be selfless, selflessness. And this is in terms of our daily behavior, our ethical behavior, our moral conduct, to be selfless rather than selfish. And then when we practice, ultimately, we will realize that there is really no self, that everything is just ever-changing. Everything is just ever-changing physical and mental experiences. So the person on the right, he's a professor by the name of Stephen Collins. He has written this book called Selfless Persons, Imagery and Thought in Theravada Buddhism. Okay, so the goal of the Buddhist path, like we said earlier on, is therefore to become a truly selfless person, both ethically and then in terms of realization. Okay, anyway, this professor, Steve Collins, is a professor of humanities in the University of Chicago. If anyone been to University of Chicago or been to the US before. Okay, so now moving on to, so now let's quickly recap what we've done. We started off with the second noble truth, the cause of suffering. We've looked at the three kinds of craving, right? Craving to sense objects, existence, non-existence. Then from craving, we talk about grasping or attachments or clinging to four kinds: objects of sense desire, views, rites and rituals, and the doctrine of the self. Because the self is so important, we therefore move on to take a look at the concept of a not self, right? So what is not self? We say that not self is the Buddhist teaching against the understanding of self that people in ancient India believe in. So And then Buddhism tells us that there's conventional truth, ultimate truth. Conventional truth, we talk about I, you, Dharma, brother, sister, persons, because we have to use language to communicate to each other. Yeah. But from the ultimate perspective, there's really no self, right? Everything is selfless. Then we move on to understand why is it that the Buddha says so. Yeah. Then that's where the 5 aggregates come in. Yeah. That the self that we talk about is actually just our body and mind. Our body consists of form. Our mind consists of 4 mental aggregates of consciousness, feelings, volition, and perception. So all these 5 aggregates come in together and explains whatever experience that we have. Then from then on, because all of 5 aggregates are constantly changing, we see the relationship between the universal characteristic of impermanence. And as long as we understand and do not cling on, then there's no suffering. But if we do not understand, we cling on to something that is impermanent, yeah, then we suffer. So this is the relationship, okay, between the 5 aggregates and the not self and suffering and impermanence. Okay, so having finished this, let's just move on to something that is perhaps more easier to relate. Yeah. Last lecture we have already spoken about Master Thich Nhat Hanh. So let's now see his teachings in relation to the Second Noble Truth, and then in relation to not self, to the 5 aggregates. Yeah. How does he see it? And then how does he tell us how to practice it? So here we have a photo of Master Thich Nhat Hanh in his 20s. He's a Vietnamese, yeah, and he was ordained at the age of 25. And then, of course, in the 1960s, we have the Vietnam War. There's lots of suffering. So his position was non-violence, no war. Right? He went to the US. He taught in universities, and then he led the peace movements over there, right, against all kinds of war. Subsequently, he moved over to France, where he established his main quarters, known as Plum Village, the Plum Village Monastery. Any one of you been there? Maybe some of you have practiced there before. And from this headquarters in France, Plum Village Monastery, his teachings became very popular and spread all over the world, including in Singapore, right? There is a society related to Master Thich Nhat Hanh. Now, Master Thich Nhat Hanh, he was denied entry to Vietnam for 30 years. He couldn't go back to Vietnam. And the Vietnamese government allowed him to return only in 2005 onwards. So he returned there in 2005, 2011. And unfortunately, in his 80s, right, in 2014, he had a brain hemorrhage, a stroke. And after that, he couldn't speak. Yeah, he couldn't move very easily. He's on a wheelchair. But nonetheless, yeah, he continued to survive as well as he can, giving us a good role model before he passed away at the age of 96 in January this year. So this is just a short account of Master Thich Nhat Hanh, very well known. Probably he's the second most famous Buddhist. The most famous Buddhist is, of course, the Dalai Lama, right? Worldwide. And he's very famous because he makes Buddhist teachings, he simplifies Buddhist teachings and relate it to our ordinary life. Yeah. So this is why now, having looked at the concepts of Second Noble Truth, not self, the 5 aggregates, we want to see how Master Thich Nhat Hanh explains them in using layman language so that we can all understand it more easily. So yes, so let us see what he says about the Second Noble Truth, right? Buddhism teaches us not to try to run away from suffering. We have to confront suffering. We have to look deeply into the nature of suffering, the cause of suffering, right? In order to recognize its cause, the making of suffering. So basically, he tells us that when we practice the Second Noble Truth, we look deeply to find the causes of our suffering. And looking deeply requires courage. And how do we do it? We use the energy of mindfulness to be truly present, to embrace our suffering, just like a mother holding a baby. A baby cries, right? The mother wants to know, why is the baby crying? Has to identify the cause of the crying, right? Maybe too cold, maybe hungry. So when we suffer, we need to find out first the causes of suffering. We look deeply, and this requires courage. This requires us to be mindful. Now, we can also benefit from the mindfulness and wisdom of our friends and teachers. Yeah, of course, we can rely on ourselves, but don't neglect the advice, the wisdom of our friends and teachers, because often they tell us what we do not see. Other people may see what we ourselves cannot see because we are imprisoned by our own notions. If we keep our suffering to ourselves, it might grow bigger every day. So just seeing the causes of our suffering lessens our burden. So we're all social beings, yeah? We need to relate to other people, things that we don't see so clearly ourselves. Our parents may tell us, our teachers may tell us, our friends, our classmates, our colleagues may tell us. And so if we have an open mind, not protective, yeah, not trying to be egoistic or defend ourselves, then we can learn from them. When we're able to identify our suffering and see all its causes, we can experience peace and joy. If we know that our body is suffering because of the way we eat, maybe we overeat, buffet, right? Singaporeans, value for money, you must eat as much as you can. The way we sleep, we know that we're supposed to sleep 7 to 8 hours a day, but if we are addicted to computer games or whatever, we may not have this amount of sleep. The way we work, right? We know that to have a balance, good health, we have to balance our work and not get burnt out. So if we know that our body is suffering because of the way we eat, sleep, or work, we should therefore aspire to eat, sleep, or work in ways that are healthier. Yeah? We encourage ourselves to end the causes. So in this way, we encourage ourselves to end the causes of our suffering. Only by a strong intention, right? Not to do things in the same way can we succeed in transforming our lives. So therefore, it is important to be aware of our own concepts, ideas, habits, attitudes, which is all the 5 aggregates. And when we are aware of that, we can change for the better. So the best way to take care of the future is to take care of the present moment. And how so? To look deeply. Now, one mindful step can take us deep into the realization of beauty and joy in us and around us. If we practice mindfulness, whatever, mindfulness of breathing, sitting, eating, and deep listening, that is the 4 noble truths in action. When the cause of suffering has been seen, has been identified, healing is possible. Therefore, we should vow to refrain from doing things that make us suffer, and we should also vow to do things that are healthy and wholesome. So this is how to put into practice, right? This second noble truth of cause of suffering. Mindfulness helps us to go home to the present. And every time we go there and recognize the condition of happiness that we have, happiness comes. That's it, yeah? So now let us take a look at Master Thich Nhat Hanh's teachings on not self, how to apply it in daily life. If we look deeply at impermanence, we see not self. There's nothing that we can be called a permanent self because things are constantly changing. So from the perspective of time, this is impermanence. From the perspective of space, this is not self. Everything has to intervene. Everything has to connect with everything else. So there's just no one self permanent that is independent, but everything is interconnected. Everything is dependent upon one another. So true self is non-self. The awareness that the self is made up only of non-self elements. Like we said, the body and mind, the 5 aggregates, because the 5 aggregates are constantly changing. There's no permanence to it. There's no separation between self and other. Everything is interconnected. Once we're aware that we're no longer caught in the idea that we are a separate entity, then we're free, right? We can work for the good of our people around us. We can work for the good of our community, society, the world as we know now, right? Environmental issues. So not self is not just a doctrine. It is an insight that can help us live more deeply, suffer less, and enjoy life much more. When we insist on something that is impermanent and without self being permanent and having a self, we suffer. So if we have the insight of not self, if we have the insight of impermanence, we should make that insight into a concentration that keeps us alive throughout the day. Then what we say, what we think, and what we do will be in the light of wisdom, and we will be making mistakes and creating suffering. Yeah. So if every moment when we realize that there's nothing permanent, everything is changing, with this insight, we will be able to have wisdom and do the right thing. Then we'll be able to let go. Letting go gives us freedom. And freedom is the only condition for happiness. If in our heart, we still cling to anything, anger, anxiety, or possessions, we cannot be free. Okay, so this is the teaching of not self, how it applies in our daily life. So there's no real separation between self or no self. Anything we do for ourselves, we do for the society at the same time. And anything we do for society, we also do for ourselves. Now, let us take a look at Master Ting A's teaching on the 5 aggregates and how to apply it in daily life. On the left, right, we see Master Thich Nhat Hanh, after he had a stroke, sort of wheelchair bound in his 90s. Yeah, so from young, right, early photo of his youth in his 20s to 90s, constantly changing our body and mind. The 5 aggregates, not self. So go back and take care of ourselves. Our body needs us, our feelings need us, our perceptions need us, our suffering need us to acknowledge it. Go home and be there for all these things. Go home to be with our body. Go home to be with our mind. Go home to be with our feelings, our perceptions, our awareness, our habits and attitudes. Yeah, understand them, be aware and transform. So our body, right? First aggregate, look at our body as a river in which every cell is a drop of water. In every moment, cells are born and cells die. Birth and death support each other. To practice mindfulness of the body, follow our breathing and focus our attention on each part of the body, from the hair on our head to the soles of our feet. We did that last week, right? We practiced body scanning from the top of our head to the bottom of our feet. We breathe mindfully and embrace every part of the body with mindfulness. Relax, smile with recognition and love, compassion and concern. We thank every part of our body, right? We appreciate it, we let it rest. When we finish scanning in this way, we will feel wonderful. So our body is our first home. Breathing in, I arrived in my body. Breathing out, I am home. Be also aware of our body's movements, whatever it is, bending, taking a shower, getting dressed, working. Practice looking deeply into them, and we will see our Buddha's nature of impermanence, not self, interbeing. We will dwell in freedom. So whatever we do, act always in full presence of mind. Be mindful in eating, drinking, walking, standing, sleeping, waking, while talking, or while being silent. All right, so that's the practice of mindfulness of our body, which we also practice in our meditation. Now, feelings, right? We practice mindfulness of feelings. Look at our feelings as a river in which every drop of water in that river is a feeling. Observe our feelings and identify each feeling as it flows by, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Recognize each feeling, smile to it, look deeply into it, and embrace it with all our heart. If we continue to look deeply, we will discover the true nature of our feeling. And we're no longer afraid even of a painful feeling. We know we are more than our feelings, and we're able to embrace each feeling and take good care of it. All right, so transform our feelings. Whenever anger comes up, the picture on the left, take out a mirror and look at yourself. When you're angry, you're not very beautiful. So why be angry, right? And upset yourself and everybody around you. Anger is like a storm. rising up from the bottom of our consciousness. When you feel it coming, focus on our breath. So we identify, we're aware of anger coming in, and then we try to transform it, to non-anger. Then we will not hurt ourselves. We will not hurt the people around us. So third, aggregate perceptions. Okay, so feelings again. I will not look upon anger as something foreign to me that I have to fight it. I have to deal with my anger with care, with love, with tenderness, with non-violence. So Buddha, we don't talk about war, right? We don't talk about violence. We talk about non-violence. So whatever feelings that we have, even if they are negative feelings, embrace them, find out the cause, attend to them with tenderness, with love, with care. Yeah. Third, aggregate perceptions. Look at our perceptions, right? Our ideas, our concepts as a river in which every drop of water in that river is a perception. When we perceive, we often distort because our perceptions are conditioned by such afflictions, such negative values as things as craving, hatred, and fear. This brings about many painful feelings, and we suffer. Understanding this can dissolve our wrong perceptions, our negative perceptions, and liberate us. I've noticed that people are dealing too much with the negative, with what is wrong. Why not try the other way, to look into the patient and see positive things, to just touch those things and make them bloom? Again, right? Transformation from suffering to happiness. Just be aware of our perceptions, the concepts and ideas that we always have, right? If we tend towards negative concepts and ideas, transform them to positive concepts and ideas. Fourth, aggregate mental formations. Look at our mental formations as a river in which every drop of water in that river is a mental formation. Practice to be aware of our mental formations, that is, our habits, our attitudes, right? Practice to be aware of our mental formations, our habits and attitudes, and to look deeply into them in order to see their true nature. With practice, we're able to nourish and develop wholesome mental formations, habits, attitudes, and transform unwholesome habits and attitudes. So freedom, non-fear, and peace are the result of this practice. So we need to wake up from our autopilot mode. We have to live deeply and with more awareness so that we can be attentive to each moment. Yeah, our habits and attitudes, if we are not aware of them, we will just automatically act that way. So this is why autopilot mode. But once we are aware of them, especially if they are negative habits and attitudes, we have the chance to transform them. Again, transforming suffering to happiness. Fifth, aggregate mental formation. Each moment is a chance for us to make peace with the world, right? Remember, transform. Oh. Okay, the fifth, aggregate consciousness. Look at our consciousness as a river in which every drop of water in that river is a consciousness. Our consciousness can be transformed at its base through the practice of mindfully guarding our senses, our six senses, and looking deeply. When our afflictions, greed, anger, delusion transform, our consciousness becomes wisdom, shining near and far, and showing the way to liberation to both individuals and the whole society. So the quality of life depends on what seeds we water in our consciousness. So if we water wholesome, positive seeds, we will have positive results. If we are not aware and we continue to with our bad negative habits, attitudes, concepts, ideas, then we will suffer. So our capacity to make peace with another person and with the world depends very much on our capacity to make peace with ourselves. So to do that, we have to be mindful of all our five aggregates. Okay, Master Thich Nhat Hanh's continue. The five aggregates they are interconnected. So look deeply in the five rivers of ourself and see how each river contains the other four. Every cell of our body contains our feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. Cloning is taking one cell of our body to duplicate our whole body. It is not the 5 aggregates that make us suffer, but the way we relate to them. Grasping, right? The 5 aggregates of grasping, first noble truth, leads to suffering. When we observe the impermanent, not self, and interdependent nature of all that is, we will not feel aversion for life. This knowing will help us see the preciousness of all life. So be yourself. Life is precious as it is. All the elements for our happiness are already here. There's no need to run, strive, search, or struggle. Just be. Last week, we say that everything that we experience is within this body and mind of ours. Nothing else. Yeah, just be. Because of your smile, we make life more beautiful, right? If we are always having a positive, wholesome mindset that expresses physically in our form, we smile at people, we ourselves are happy, people around us are happy. Life is beautiful for everybody. If we see the 5 aggregates as they are, the self no longer exists because everything is just constantly changing. To see the one in the all is to break through the attachment to the false view of self, to be liberated from every form of suffering. It is to become a Buddha, one who lives in peace, joy, and freedom, neither afraid of nor attached to anything. So some people say that Buddhist practice is to dissolve the self. They do not understand that there's not self to be dissolved. There's only the notion of self to transcend. Ultimate truth, there's really no self. Why do we talk about self? Because it is a concept, conventional truth for our daily communication. So nothing to be dissolved. Just transcend this notion. So enlightenment is when a water realizes it is the ocean. Yeah. So we're all like waves in the ocean. We do not realize that. Yeah. But when we realize that we're all interconnected, just like waves and the ocean, right? The water of wave and ocean. Yeah. They're all the same, except that they're expressed in different ways. So enlightenment is when a wave realizes it is the ocean. Great. Finish. Yeah. Summary. Introduction. We started off with reviewing the first lecture on the noble truth of the nature of suffering. Then we moved on to the second noble truth, causes of suffering, 3 kinds of craving. For objects of sense desire, existence, non-existence, 4 kinds of grasping or attachment. 2 objects of sense desire, views, rites and rituals, doctrine of the self. Then we talk about the fundamental cause, right? Of darkness is ignorance or delusion. From then on, we move on to the third universal characteristic of not self, by first understanding what is self. Understanding not self is significance in Buddhism, and then understanding conventional truth and ultimate truth. And from here, how to explain not self in Buddhist teachings, we look at the 5 aggregates, beginning with a conceptual understanding, then taking a look at physical factor, the aggregate of form, mental factors, that is our mind, right? Consisting of the aggregates of feelings, which represent our emotive or affective dimension, perceptions, our ideas and concepts, conceptual dimension, mental formations, which is our habits and attitudes, the moral dimension, and then consciousness, our awareness dimension. Then we look at the 5 aggregates and the 3 universal characteristics in terms of impermanence, suffering, not self, and application in daily life. We look at the teachings of Master Thich Nhat Hanh on the second noble truth, how to apply them in daily life, how to apply the teaching of not self in daily life, and how to apply the teaching of the 5 aggregates in daily life. Thank you. Okay, if you have a Q&A, well, feel free to ask. If not, yeah, we can always do a few minutes of meditation before our closing puja. Yeah, up to you. Okay.
If anyone has any questions, you can unmute yourself or you can post in the chat box. Thank you very much. Sure.
Oh. Okay, let me stop share and see if there's any. Okay. Too cheap to ask questions. Okay, never mind. I'm sure some of you have heard of such teachings before, expressed in different ways by different speakers, right? Dharma speakers in the past. The more often you hear this expressed in different ways, something will click to you somehow, right? Someday. Shall we move on then to meditation? Ken? Okay, let me move on to, I just got, nothing, everything is impermanent, right? So our office has also just upgraded my laptop. So I'm still trying to figure out how to use it, yeah? Okay, let's see. I think this should work. Okay, maybe we can do a few minutes of meditation before we come to the closing puja. Is that okay? Yeah. Okay, as usual, let's calm ourselves down. I think I was quite energized in talking about all these 5 aggregates and not self. So now let's just calm our mind. Okay, focus on your breath. Relax, focus on your breath. I'm sure by now you wouldn't find it too difficult to do so. Focus on your breath, gently close your eyes. And let us calm ourselves. Yeah, calm our body. Earlier on, we talked about mindfulness of body. If we are mindful of our body, we will calm our body. Right? Like the breath is our body. Right? So be mindful of our breath. In the process, we will calm our body. Whenever you're ready, be mindful of your feelings, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. This will help us to calm our mind. So when we practice mindfulness of body, mindfulness of feelings, we are actually calming our body and mind. Now let us do a quick scanning of our body, beginning with the upper part of our body, right? So just focus broadly on our face, relax all the cells and all the muscles of our face and all the organs, all the tissues. Yeah, just relax, smile, be aware, be mindful, relax, smile. Okay, now let us move on from the head to our shoulders, from our shoulders to the fingertips. Relax all the cells, tissues, and muscles. Relax. Thank you. We are grateful for your hard work. Now let us relax, just smile to them in appreciation. So relax our face, from shoulder to our fingers. That's the upper part of our body. Now let's relax our middle body, the front first, yeah, the chest and all the cells, organs, tissues, muscles. Relax the front of our middle body, the chest. Smile. Be grateful for their hard work. Express our appreciation. Smile to them. Relax. Okay, now let's relax our back, yeah, from the tip of the neck to the tip of the backbone, right? From the top to the tip of our backbone, of our back. Relax all the cells, muscles, tissues. Okay, now let's relax our lower body, right? From our buttocks, through our thighs, through our knees, elbows, to our toes. Relax every part of it, all the cells, all the tissues, all the muscles. Just relax. So we have scanned our body from the top to the bottom. In the process, we're mindful of our body. We're practicing mindfulness of body. Yeah, we're calming our body. Now let's calm our mind further by doing loving kindness meditation. Let's gently focus on our heart. Yeah. Let's gently focus on our heart and tell ourselves, may I be well. May I be happy. May I be peaceful. May I be loved. Again, gently focus our attention on our heart. And from our heart, all the cells of our body. May all the cells of my body be well. May all the cells of my body be happy. May all the cells of my body be peaceful. And may all cells of my body be loved. So now feel, right, that our body, all the cells of our body are well, are happy, are peaceful, are loved. Okay, now imagine in front of us are the people who matter to us, our families, friends, colleagues, classmates, neighbors. Yeah, let's wish them. May you be well. May you be happy. May you be peaceful. May you be loved. Yeah, all the people who matter to us, let's wish them. May you be well. May you be happy. May you be peaceful. May you be loved. Feel that all the cells in our body, which are already filled with well-being, happiness, peace, and love, radiate all this, right, to the people who matter to us. Radiate our well-being, radiate our happiness, radiate our peace, radiate our love to all the people around us. Now, let us then wish all people, right, in this world, yeah, all the beings, yeah, all the creatures, all the living beings in this world on our planet Earth, may you be well. May you be happy. May you be peaceful. May you be loved. All beings, all living beings in this world, in our Earth planet, may all of you be well. May all beings be happy. May all of you be peaceful. May all of you be loved. Again, right? From all the cells in our body already filled with well-being, happiness, peace, and love, radiate to all beings in our world, in our planet Earth. May all beings be well. May all beings be happy. May all beings be peaceful. May all beings be loved. So again, enjoy this sense, yeah, of well-being, of happiness, of peace, of love from yourself, radiating outwards to all beings in the world. Yeah. May all beings be well. May all beings be happy. May all beings be peaceful. And may all beings be loved. Okay, now gently open your eyes. We've calmed our body, we've calmed our mind, we've suffused our mind with well-being, happiness, peace, and love, and radiating to all beings. I think we're ready for the closing puja. Yeah, just a short closing puja. So begin by paying homage to the Buddha, palms together, and let's bow 3 times. First bow. Second bow, and third bow. Okay, let us now express gratitude. Let us now, express repentance for all our past and present misdeeds. Our palms together, we recite: 往昔所造诸恶业，皆有无始贪嗔痴，从身语意之所生。一切我今皆忏悔。Bow. Okay, let us now express our resolve to practice the Buddha's path well. Palms together. Recite: 众生无边誓愿度，烦恼无尽誓愿断，法门无量誓愿学，佛道无上誓愿成。Bow. Let us seek refuge in the triple gem. Palms together, recite: 自归依佛，当愿众生提结大道，发无上心。Bow. 自归依法，当愿众生深入经藏，智慧如海。Bow. 自归依僧，当愿众生同理大众，一切无碍，而难胜众。Bow. Finally, dedication of merit. Palms together, recite: 愿以此功德普及于一切，我等与众生皆共成佛道。Bow. Okay, may all of you be well and happy. May all of you be peaceful. May all of you be loved. May all beings be well and happy.